Ambassador Schwab, though, do you think that it's different, though, this time around? India has been willing to open up, but there are certain sectors like agriculture, dairy. These are important sectors to the country to maintain its food security, to protect its farmers. And this is something really as a no-go. Every country has a prerogative as to what it wants to do. But what I'm trying to say here is perhaps that the issue this time is from the other side, from the Trump administration.
So again, I'm not in the negotiating room, you're not in the negotiating room, and it's really easy to second guess somebody else's trade negotiation. When I was a trade negotiator, somebody was always second guessing my deals or my potential deals. And I would say this, that if there is goodwill and a political backbone on both sides, then a deal is doable and it should be doable. And if one approach doesn't work, then you try another one. The US side wants to get the deal done with India as well. And it hasn't been, don't think it's been easy doing a deal with the EU. Don't think it's been easy doing a deal with Japan and so on. Those were not easy deals, including in agriculture.
Ambassador Schwab, here is the United States trying to decouple or de-risk from China. It needs a key ally like India, be it for geopolitical reasons or even in terms of an alternative manufacturing hub to China. How counterproductive really are those India tariffs from a perspective of a long-term view for US interests?
Well, this has been a source of frustration for me, not just now, but going back almost a decade or more. The potential for India to step in and be not just the China plus one, but be the alternative for U.S. businesses has been tremendous for quite some time. U.S. businesses have recognized that, but unfortunately, Indian policies and Indian regulatory environment and tariff environment and uncertainty about doing business in India has made it very, very difficult, if not impossible, for the U.S. companies to do the kind of investing in India that they have been able to do in the past in China. And so I think the U.S. companies would really like to have those kinds of relationships in India for the long term as an alternative to China. Originally, it might have been in addition to China, but really as a better, safer, healthier alternative than China in many cases.
Ambassador Schwab, what's your worry for US businesses? You've compared it to a frog in boiling water. Place the frog in cold water, it won't jump out, but gradually turn up the heat and the frog won't feel the heat, but will get cooked and die. What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, I am not a pro-tariff person. I believe that there can be strategic trade measures that have to be taken. I worry, and I use the frog example, because once you start down that road of raising tariffs, you can really hurt yourself and your own competitiveness. And it is not in the US interest to have a wall of tariffs around ourselves, particularly when we're talking about putting tariffs and inputs when over a third of US imports are inputs into further manufacturing. There's a political political commentators in the US like to say, well, we don't make things anymore. Well, that's not true. The US is a major manufacturer, and we're a major manufacturing exporter. But if our manufacturers are stymied because they're having to pay more for their inputs than their competitors, then they will have a hard time exporting or competing overseas for exports, and they will end up having to invest overseas so as to serve their international markets. And we don't want that to happen. We
Right.
need to stay competitive, and the way you stay competitive is by competing. And then, of course, you have the issue of US consumers, the ultimate consumer, and you really don't want to penalize them.
Ambassador Schwab, thank you so much for your time here on NDTV.